the champagne glass shattered against marble. 11:32 p.m. on a Saturday night, 200 guests in designer gowns froze mid-conversation as the projector screen behind me displayed 17 bank statements I wasn't supposed to have. The worst part wasn't my stepmother's face going white. It wasn't the gasps echoing through the ballroom. It was watching my father, for the first time in 9 years, realize he'd married a monster, and I'd just become the villain who exposed her at her own charity gala. But to understand how I got there, you need to know how it started. 9 years earlier, I was 15 when Dad brought home Veronica. She walked into our Boston townhouse with fresh flowers and a smile that belonged in a toothpaste commercial. "I've always wanted a daughter," she said, squeezing my shoulder just hard enough to hurt while Dad beamed. My real mom had died 3 years before. Cancer. The kind that takes everything slowly, so you watch them disappear piece by piece. Dad had been lost ever since, until Veronica. She came with her own daughter, Isabel. 17, perfect skin, perfect grades, captain of the debate team. Within a week, Isabel had my old bedroom, the one with the window seat Mom and I had painted together. "You understand, don't you?" Veronica asked, already moving my boxes. "Isabel needs the space for all her trophies." I got the basement room. No windows, concrete walls that smelled like mildew. Dad said it was temporary. That was month 1. By month 3, the gaslighting started. Small things. My favorite sweater would vanish, then appear in Isabel's closet. "Oh, sweetie, that's always been mine," she'd say while Veronica nodded sympathetically. "You're confused again." My homework disappeared the night before it was due. 12 hours of work on a history project. Gone. Found it later in the trash, soaked in coffee. "You must have thrown it away by accident," Veronica said, touching my father's arm. "She's been so scattered lately. Should we talk to someone?" The allowance Mom had left me in a trust, $200 monthly until I turned 18, stopped coming. "What allowance?" Veronica frowned when I asked. "Your father and I agreed you'd earn money through chores now. It builds character." I looked at Dad. He looked at Veronica. "That sounds right," he said quietly. It didn't sound right, but the paperwork said Veronica's name now. She'd been added to the trust as guardian of funds. Dad had signed it during their honeymoon. The pattern became clearer over the next year. Anything of Mom's that I owned would break or disappear. Her jewelry box fell off my dresser. I found it in pieces, though I never kept it anywhere near the edge. Her recipe cards were accidentally donated. Her photo albums got water damage from a leaky pipe that only affected my corner of the basement. Every loss was an accident. Every accident was my fault for being careless. At school, I was the scholarship kid at a private academy where Isabel reigned. She'd introduce me to her friends. "This is my stepsister. She's struggling with some things." Then she'd lower her voice just loud enough for me to hear. "Family issues. It's sad, really." I started eating lunch in the library, but the worst part? Dad believed everything they said. When I tried to tell him about my missing things, Veronica would tear up. "I'm trying so hard," she'd whisper. "But she resents me for not being her mother. I understand, I do. But these accusations?" Dad would take me aside later. "I know this is hard, but you need to give Veronica a chance. She loves you." The floor would tilt under my feet. Did she? Was I crazy? Was grief making me paranoid? I started documenting everything. A journal hidden inside my mattress. Dates, times, incidents. 47 pages over 2 years. My best friend Kat was the first person who believed me. We were 16, studying for SATs in her bedroom when I finally broke down. "They're gaslighting you," she said, looking through my journal. "This isn't normal. None of this is normal." "But what can I do?" The words came out broken. "My dad won't believe me. I have no proof except this notebook." "Then we get proof," Kat said. "Real proof." That weekend, I snuck into Dad's home office. My hands shook as I logged into his computer, password still Mom's birthday, which felt like a knife, and searched through his emails. I didn't know what I was looking for. Evidence. Something. Anything. I found it in a folder labeled Trust Documents. The inheritance Mom had left me wasn't $200 monthly. It was $150,000, invested and growing, meant to pay for college and help me start my life. The monthly payments were interest, supposed to be $850, not $200. Veronica had been skimming $650 every month for 6 years, $46,800. My stomach dropped to my feet. But I kept reading. There were more files, transfer records, a second account in Isabel's name that I'd never heard of, funded with $30,000 from estate settlement, my mother's estate, my inheritance, credit card statements showing charges to stores I'd never been to, under my name, building my debt while I was still a minor, emails between Veronica and a lawyer discussing how to legally restructure the remaining trust assets before I turned 18. 4 months away. I took photos of everything, 63 screenshots, hands shaking so hard I had to retake several. The office door creaked behind me. Find anything interesting? Isabel stood in the doorway, arms crossed. She was wearing my mother's pearl necklace, the one that had disappeared 3 years ago. My throat closed. That's not yours. Prove it. She smiled. Oh, wait, you can't. Because Mom said I could have it. Right, Mom? Veronica appeared behind her. Her face was calm, but her eyes were ice. I think we need to have a family discussion. They didn't yell. That would have been easier. Instead, we sat in the living room like a therapy session from hell. Dad in his armchair, looking tired and confused. Veronica on the sofa, hands folded. Isabel beside her, playing the concerned sister. Me, alone on the other side, phone clutched in my pocket with 63 screenshots that could destroy everything. Your father and I are worried, Veronica began. This obsession with your mother's things, the accusations, it's becoming unhealthy. I have proof. My voice came out steady, stronger than I felt. I found the trust documents, the bank transfers. I know what you've been doing. Dad leaned forward. What are you talking about? She's been stealing from my inheritance, $76,000 over 6 years. Silence crashed through the room. That's quite an accusation, Veronica said softly. Based on what? Your journal of grievances? Honey, that's not proof. That's paranoia. Show me then, I said. Show me the trust statements. Let's call the bank right now. Dad looked at Veronica. The statements are all in order, she said. I've been managing them carefully, but if you want to involve the bank over our daughters, she paused, choosing her words. Episode, we can do that. Though I should mention we've already scheduled an appointment with Dr. Patterson for her. Who's Dr. Patterson? I asked. A psychiatrist, Dad said quietly. We think you might benefit from talking to someone professional about the grief, anger. The walls started closing in. They were good, so good, turning my evidence into symptoms, my truth into delusion. I have screenshots, I said. From your computer, your emails, the bank accounts, all of it. Veronica's face didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. You went through our private computer, our personal files? She turned to Dad. This is what I've been afraid of. The invasion of privacy. The distrust. She needs help. Show us the screenshots then, Isabel said. If they're real. I pulled out my phone. It was dead. I'd forgotten to charge it after taking all those photos. The screen was black, lifeless. Well? Veronica asked gently. It's dead, but I have them. I swear I have them. Dad's face did something I'd never seen before. He looked at me like I was a stranger, someone broken he didn't know how to fix. I think, he said slowly, we should call Dr. Patterson tonight. I spent that night in my basement room, phone charging, transferring screenshots to every cloud service I could access. Email, Dropbox, Google Drive, USB drives hidden in 3 different locations. They weren't going to make me disappear. Not my evidence, not my truth. But the fear was real now, cold and solid in my chest. What if they did get me declared unstable? What if I ended up in some facility while Veronica cleaned out the rest of Mom's trust? I couldn't do this alone. At 6:47 a.m., I emailed copies of everything to Kat with a subject line, "If anything happens to me." Then I added my mom's sister, Aunt Caroline, who lived in California. We hadn't spoken in years, not since Veronica had gently suggested that Dad's new family needed space to bond. My finger hovered over send. Once I did this, there was no going back. This would blow up my family, what was left of it. I pressed send. Then I went upstairs for breakfast, like nothing had happened. Veronica had made pancakes, Dad's favorite. She smiled at me across the table, syrup gleaming on her lips. "How are you feeling today, sweetheart? Better?" "Much better," I lied. "Good. Dr. Patterson can see you this afternoon at 3. I'll drive you." The trap was closing, but I wasn't the only one caught in it anymore. My phone buzzed. Text from Aunt Caroline. "Call me now." I excused myself to the bathroom and called. "Is this real?" Her voice was shaking. "Tell me this is real and not some kind of joke." "It's real, all of it." "I'm getting on a plane. Don't do anything, don't go anywhere with them. I'm calling a lawyer right now. Do you understand me?" "You are not crazy. Your mother left those assets in trust with specific instructions, and I have copies of the original documents." My knees went weak. "You do?" "She gave me copies when she first got sick. She was worried about exactly this. She didn't trust your father to handle money, and she made me promise to check in on you. Then Veronica started screening calls, and your father said you needed space, and I—" Her voice broke. "I should have pushed harder. I should have come sooner." "You're coming now," I said. "That's what matters." "I land at 6 p.m. The lawyer will be with me. Don't sign anything. Don't admit to anything. Don't go to that psychiatrist appointment. They'll drag me there. Then you tell Dr. Patterson the truth. Everything. Real doctors can spot manipulation. Trust me." I did go to the appointment. Veronica drove, making small talk about the weather while I sat in the passenger seat, screaming inside. Dr. Patterson's office smelled like lavender and old books. She was 60-something with steel gray hair and eyes that actually looked at you, not through you. "Why don't you tell me what's been happening?" she said after Veronica left us alone. So I did. Everything. The gaslighting, the stolen inheritance, the evidence, the planned psychiatric labeling to discredit me. She didn't interrupt, just listened, taking notes. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Do you have the evidence with you?" I showed her the screenshots on my phone. She studied them carefully. "These are substantial allegations with substantial proof. What you're describing isn't grief or paranoia. It's financial abuse and emotional manipulation." She looked up. "How old are you?" 17, 18 in 4 months. "And you're certain these documents are authentic?" "My aunt has the originals. She's flying in tonight with a lawyer." Dr. Patterson nodded slowly. "Then I think we need to have a conversation with your stepmother. Together. Right now." Veronica's smile was perfect when she walked back in. "So, doctor, what do you think? Can you help her?" "I think," Dr. Patterson said, "we need to discuss some discrepancies in financial documentation regarding this young woman's maternal inheritance. She's shown me evidence suggesting significant misappropriation of funds." The smile froze. "I'm sorry. What?" "The trust left by her mother. There appear to be irregularities in how it's been managed." "I don't appreciate these accusations." Veronica stood up. "I came here for help with my stepdaughter's mental health, not to be attacked with paranoid fantasies." "The bank statements aren't fantasies," I said quietly. "Neither are the transfer records, or the emails about restructuring my trust before I turn 18. You have no right to access private financial documents." "I have every right to documents about my own inheritance." "Dr. Patterson," Veronica's voice got sharp, "are you encouraging this behavior? This invasion of privacy? These wild accusations?" "I'm encouraging the truth," Dr. Patterson said calmly, "and I'm mandated to report suspected financial abuse of a minor, which is what I'm looking at." The color drained from Veronica's face. "You can't be serious." "Extremely serious. I'm also going to recommend that this young woman's father come in for a session. Sometimes family members are unaware of manipulation happening in their own homes. Her father will back me completely. Then he has nothing to worry about. We drove home in silence. Veronica's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. At one point, she spoke without looking at me. "You have no idea what you've started." "Neither do you," I said. Aunt Caroline arrived with a lawyer named Ms. Chen, who wore a suit that cost more than my entire wardrobe and carried a briefcase that might as well have been labeled, "Your Worst Nightmare." The meeting happened in our living room. Dad, Veronica, Isabel, me, Aunt Caroline, and Ms. Chen, who laid out documents on the coffee table like evidence at a crime scene. "This," she said, pointing to the first set, "is the original trust established by Margaret before her death. As you can see, it specifies $150,000 in invested assets with monthly interest payments of approximately $850 to be given directly to her daughter until age 18, at which point she receives full control." Dad picked up the papers. His hands were shaking. "This," Ms. Chen continued, "is what's currently in the account. $73,000. $77,000 are unaccounted for." "There were expenses," Veronica said. "Legal fees, management costs, investment losses." "No." Ms. Chen's voice could cut glass. "There are transfer records showing systematic withdrawals to accounts in your name and your daughter's name. This isn't mismanagement. This is theft." "That's absurd." "We also have the credit card statements. Purchases made under this minor's name and social security number without her knowledge or consent. That's identity theft. And emails discussing how to legally restructure the remaining assets before she reaches majority. That's evidence of intent to defraud." Silence. Dad looked at Veronica like he'd never seen her before. "Tell me this isn't true." "It's taken out of context." "Tell me. You didn't steal from my daughter, from my wife's legacy." "Your wife is dead!" Veronica's composure finally cracked. "I'm your wife now. I've taken care of this house, raised your daughter, given up my career to be here. That money was compensation for everything I've done." "That money," Ms. Chen said coldly, "was not yours to take." Dad stood up slowly. He looked 10 years older than he had that morning. "Get out." "Excuse me?" "Get out of my house. Both of you. Now." "You can't be serious." Veronica laughed, but it sounded wrong, desperate. "Over some paperwork? Some misunderstanding? You stole from my daughter. You gaslit her. You tried to have her committed to cover it up." His voice broke. "You wore my wife's necklace, the one you said was lost." Isabel's hand flew to her throat where the pearls hung. "Get out," Dad repeated. "We'll discuss divorce terms through lawyers." Veronica didn't go quietly. She hired an expensive attorney who argued that the money was compensation for emotional labor and parental services. She launched a social media campaign painting herself as a victim of a troubled stepdaughter's vindictive lies. She gave interviews to local news about the importance of mental health awareness. For 2 months, she almost won the narrative. Then, Ms. Chen discovered something else. Veronica's charity, Second Chances Foundation, raising money for underprivileged children, was funded almost entirely by donations she'd solicited using my mother's story. "In memory of Margaret," the website read, "helping children who've lost parents." Except the money wasn't helping children, it was paying for Veronica's lifestyle. Designer clothes for her and Isabel, luxury vacations, a beach house in Cape Cod. The annual gala was scheduled for November 14th. 200 donors, champagne, and self-congratulation. Ms. Chen called me 3 days ago. "How would you feel about making a speech?" "What kind of speech?" "The truth. About where the money really went." My father was sitting across from me when I took the call. He'd aged a decade in 2 months, started therapy, apologized maybe 1,000 times. It would never be enough, but it was. "Something, do it," he said quietly. "Your mother would want the truth out." So I wrote a speech, not about revenge, about accountability, about stolen childhoods and gaslit grief and the cost of looking away. The night of the gala, I wore my mother's dress, the one Veronica had accidentally donated but that Aunt Caroline had saved. Black velvet, simple, elegant. I waited until Veronica had given her speech about helping vulnerable children, until she'd raised her champagne glass to toast the generosity of this community. Then I stood up. "Excuse me," I said. "I have something to add." The ballroom went quiet. Veronica's face was a mask of confusion. "Sweetheart, this isn't really the time." "My name is not Sweetheart, it's Catherine." I walked to the front of the room. "And you're right. This isn't the time for lies anymore." Someone handed me the microphone. My hands were steady. 9 years ago, my mother died of cancer. She left me an inheritance, a trust fund meant to pay for my education and help me build a future. She also asked that any memorial donations go to pediatric cancer research. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the projector. This is what actually happened to that money. The screen lit up with bank statements, transfer records, side-by-side comparisons of what the trust should hold versus what remained. $77,000 stolen over 6 years. Used to fund a lifestyle while I lived in a basement and was told I was crazy for noticing my things disappearing. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "This charity," I continued, "raised money in my mother's name. Here's where that money went." More images. Credit card statements for designer purchases. Vacation photos tagged with Second Chances Foundation funds. The beach house deed. "Not to underprivileged children. To fund the woman who stole my inheritance while trying to have me committed to hide her crimes." Veronica stood up. "This is insane. She's unwell." "I have 17 witnesses," I said, "including a forensic accountant, a psychiatrist, and a lawyer. I have documentation of every theft, every manipulation, every lie, and I have something else." I pulled up the final image. An email from Veronica to her lawyer, dated 3 months earlier. "Need to accelerate timeline. The girl is getting suspicious. Once she's 18, it is harder to claim instability. Suggest psychiatric hold before birthday." The room exploded into noise. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered. That's where this story started, remember? And champagne spread across marble like spilled truth. Veronica tried to speak. I tried to leave, but 200 witnesses had just seen everything. The police were called. Not by me. By one of the donors, a district attorney who'd been writing checks to what she thought was a real charity. I watched Veronica and Isabel being escorted out through a side door, and I felt nothing. Not triumph, not satisfied, just exhausted relief. My father appeared beside me. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I know," I said. "But sorry doesn't give me back 9 years. "No," he agreed. "It doesn't. But I'd like to try to make the remaining ones better, if you'll let me." I looked at him, really looked, saw the guilt and shame and genuine remorse in his eyes. "That's going to take time," I said. "I have time," he said. "However long you need." The legal proceedings took 18 months. Veronica was charged with identity theft, embezzlement, and charity fraud. Isabel was tried as an accomplice. She'd known about the money, had benefited from it, had helped gaslight me. They both got prison time. Not enough, in my opinion, but something. The trust was restored with penalties and interest, enough to pay for college anywhere I wanted. I chose California, close to Aunt Caroline, far from Boston and memories of basements and ghosts. Dad and I talk now. Weekly phone calls. Awkward at first, getting easier. He sold the townhouse, too many bad memories, and moved to something smaller. Started actually grieving Mom instead of trying to replace her. Some relationships can be rebuilt, some can't. We're figuring out which this is. But here's what I learned. Your truth doesn't need everyone's belief to be valid. Documentation is power, and sometimes destroying someone's perfect image is the only way to reveal the rot underneath. I'm 24 now, in grad school for psychology, specializing in family trauma and financial abuse, because the best revenge isn't destruction, it's transformation, taking your pain and turning it into purpose, taking your story and making sure no one else has to live it alone, and knowing that the truth, eventually, always surfaces, even if you have to be the one to bring the receipts. If you're living in a situation like mine, document everything. Tell someone outside the family. You're not crazy. You're not imagining it. And you deserve better than gaslighting disguised as love.